Hey guys, following our boys' gutsy win against the Bombers today, my hopes that we would finally get a win in both the AFL and AFLW teams in the same round will unfortunately have to elude us for another year, as our brilliant start to the AFLW season in 2026 hits a giant brick wall today in the form of the Hawthorn Hawks, which in a game which can only really be described as a second half absolute crash out in what Hawthorn wish happened last year in their grudge match. As, basically the story was flipped from the 24 semi-final in which Port Adelaide found itself going into the later part of the game with a 12-point surplus only to be turned into a 32-point deficit as the Hawks absolutely destroyed us in the final quarter, which we didn't kick a single goal. I don't even think we kicked a single behind either. So let's start with that topic, because I think that's going to be a big talk about today's game. Obviously, last week I kind of excused our girls' poor attacking side, as obviously we were playing a pretty defensive game, and we were up against a team that was quite defensive in the form of the Fremantle Dockers. However, I saw the Hawks' underperforming backline on their game against Melbourne last week, and really thought this was a real good opportunity for our forwards to feast. However, despite that in that first half we kicked a total of 4 goals, despite having a huge amount of midfield dominance. And a lot of that, in my mind, had to come down to a really stagnant forward line. Like, I felt like there was multiple times in the first and second quarter where I saw players like Molly Brooksby with the ball in hand with a free kick outside 50, looking inside only to see none of our forwards trying to make options. They're all kind of just standing there. As a result, it ended up not being super hard for the Hawthorn Hawks to shut down what I thought was one of the best forward lines in the competition. And this just continued to piss me off throughout all of the first half, as we were absolutely dominating the midfield. Dowrick was once again absolutely on fire. She has started this season so amazingly, and she was moving the ball real fast down the ground with some great breakout speed. And we had Caitlin Pope shooting in. I remember there's one point in the second quarter where she came out of nowhere and picked up the ball and booted an amazing goal. And alongside those two, we also had Maria Maloney, who was doing a ton of ground ball gets, and Ella Bogue, who was doing an amazing job on the wing. And to really exemplify just how good we were looking, it had to be that Dowry goal where she broke a tackle right next to the behind post, only to run across the goals and boot one into the goals at point blank range. However, as I was mentioning, despite all this midfield domination we had, we just really couldn't get any scoring shots. And alongside a stagnant forward line, we also had to deal with Lucy Wales, who I think I can see why a lot of people call her the best defensive ruck in the competition, as basically when we had midfield domination, she would just pull back into us 50 and be just ready to scoop up any dump kick there as the loose defender. And so that was obviously our first half, as we had all this midfield domination with no scoring. And to make matters worse, I think we were exhausting ourselves at the end of that last quarter, because I remember near the end of the second quarter, Lauren Young got this amazing infield goal, and the cameras zoomed into her, and she was gasping for air, like she just run a 400-meter sprint. And what then followed that was some of our probably most sloppiest play at the end of that second quarter, as we yielded a very poor kick-in that turned into a goal with only seconds left on the clock, which took our 18-point margin down to a 12-point margin going into half-time. So hopefully, as we went into half-time, I was like, okay, we got the break now, we can reset, we can get the team back up. But unfortunately, it was just all downhill from there. It obviously started at the start of the third quarter, when it was announced that Indy Tarhow would be taken off due to knee soreness. Obviously, she has the ACL, so they wanted to be extra cautious. But in a game where you had a lot of trouble getting goals, the last thing you wanted to do was take out your main key forward in the forward line. As a result, we had to basically rely entirely on Lauren Young and Gemma Houghton to do all the work. And to make matters worse, Indy Tarhow was also our secondary ruck, so Matilda Schultz suddenly found herself having to do a lot more work. And then to make matters worse, as I said, our midfield just looked gassed as Hawthorn just started getting on top of us across the ground, and we basically found ourselves in a fight for our lives inside Hawthorn's 50. And then if you just add on two costly 50-metre penalties given to Poppy Stockwell for the Hawks, she turned both of those into easy goals, and we suddenly found ourselves 7 points down going into three-quarter time. In fact, it could have been even worse if Houghton had not taken matters into her own hands and kicked her first goal of the year from an amazing breakout of a tackle. So, obviously, 7 points up going into the last quarter, I was kind of optimistic as, historically we have been a really good last quarter team. Just think about what we did against Hawthorn back in 2024. But that fourth quarter, oh man, just everything seemed to go wrong. The ball just seemed to always bounce to the Hawthorn's favour. And like anytime we did a handball into space, it would go to one of their players. Every time they did a handball into space, it would go to they would stay in their control. And what you then had was situations where the ball would just bounce into our 50, bounce over our defender, land perfectly in the lap of one of the Hawthorn forwards who would just boot a real easy goal. And then in contrast, when the ball went down our end, it just bounced awkwardly. Our player wouldn't get their hands on it. A defender would get their hands on it. And in the case of Justin Robinson, she accidentally gave away a high contact free kick in what probably should have been a goal for us in that quarter. And so not only do we lose, we end up losing by 32. So, that positive percentage we built up in the last game is unfortunately now all gone, as we are now no longer in the top 8, yet alone the top 4, which is rather unfortunate, as I was really hoping we would be going into next week still undefeated. While I generally think this was a game lost by our players just over-exhausting themselves in the first half, I do want to have a bit of a concern about the umpiring. I'm really curious, what counts as holding the player? I swear there were multiple times in the game where our players were being dragged around without the ball by a Hawthorn player, and there was no whistle called. And I think it was specifically at one point where Emily Borg was literally trying to get a ground ball that she hadn't touched yet, and she was just being non-stop grappled by a Hawthorn forward, and it took 10 seconds of her just being grappled as she's trying to get to a ball before they finally play the hole in the man free kick. I seriously do not understand why that is such a hard call to get. And finally, for the negatives I want to talk about this game, we do also need to talk about that ruck situation. I and so many other Port fans have been heaps screaming at the team that we just do not want to see Tahau in the ruck. Not only because she's an amazing forward that just should stay in the forward line where she's at her best. We also just had the situation that since she went down today, we not only lost a key forward, we lost our secondary ruck, and Schultz basically found ourselves having to, go up against, Lucy Wales in defence and in the midfield, and then we also had Jack Dupay going up against her in the forward line, and she just got overworked, and we didn't really have anyone else to go up against her. So I think we really need someone else to come in as the ruck. Obviously, we unfortunately have the news that Gaunt's injured, so she can't come in. Do we play Parsons? I know, obviously, this week we're playing at Monica, so it'd be good for our Sydney-based parents if she debuts this week. But, I'm really concerned about what are we doing for the second ruck at the moment, because it really cannot be Tahau. Obviously, speaking a bit more about some of those debutantes, obviously Eaton and Crane, I think, are getting more solid into the team. I think they had a really good first half of the game, and I think Eaton even actually stayed playing pretty well in the later half. I think she had some good contested work. And I think they're definitely building to be part of our easy parts of our best team on ground, despite, obviously, I think, like the rest of the team, kind of gassing themselves out in that first half. Outside of the two debutants, we also had, Ella Heads, who had a good game. I'm hoping she's not going to face any repercussions for that head knock on Stockwell. And we also had Brooksby, who I remember last year having a really good game against the Hawks. She almost actually had her first goal, which would have been amazing if she got that, but unfortunately got rushed through. So unfortunately, she doesn't even get a behind recorded for that. So I guess, look, while I hate losing to Hawthorn, I should really probably start talking about next week. as this video has gone on long enough. Hopefully, because we took the precautious move with Tahal, she should be good. She should be good to go next week. As for the rest of the team, I do think it's now time for change. With the likes of Window, Simon, Teakle all good to go, I think now is time to swing the axe and really start making some changes to this list makeup. Teakle is very much. We obviously very much needed Teakle tonight when Tahal went down. And I think she probably should be brought into the team, potentially to act as that second ruck if we're not going to play Parsons. Simon, meanwhile, I think, if our defence is going to be under that much pressure, I think we want a talent like Simon. I think she should be all good to go. I presume we rested her this week because I think she still wanted a bit more time to recover. And finally, Piper Window, I think she's just I think she is such a good talent that I think you should be taking someone like Elkington out of the team for her. Obviously, I think Elkington has done a great job, as she did pretty well today, but Piper Window is such a great talent that I think it's just being wasted not playing her. So I think all three of those players should be brought into the team next week. As for who we take out, I don't know. But yeah, I definitely think we should find a way to get all three of them into the team. Obviously, talking more about the game, obviously I can't wait. Obviously, I'm in Canberra, so I'm really excited that the girls are coming here next week. Although, annoyingly, the 12:35 time slot on a Sunday does make it a bit difficult, as I might be juggling around some junior grand finals in the local ACT league. But aside that, I'm really excited to see the girls finally come to Monica. Obviously, our record against GWS is pretty good. We have yet to lose to them. We almost lost to them in 24. But, I know GWS is a bit scary because they obviously had that upset win against West Coast, but seeing them get pretty easily managed by the Ds today and seeing Gold Coast beat West Coast the day before, I think it looks more like West Coast dropped the ball rather than GWS's taking it to a new level as a team. So I'm optimistic that we are coming in as the better favourites, and I'm also hoping that just how this Hawthorn game ended is a bit of a slap to the face to the girls to note that, just because we win games like the Freo game doesn't mean success is going to be handed to this team. The team has to fight for those wins. And it's for that reason I'm pretty optimistic about next week, so fingers crossed we can get back on the winners list and also potentially get that percentage back, because I very much want to be over 100% and back in the top 8. But until then, let's go Power!